Hi, everyone. I'm Becca Aaronson. I'm a co-founder and the Chief Product Officer at News Product Alliance, and we're really excited to sponsor ISOJ. This is one of my favorite conferences as a local Austinite, and it's really exciting to be in this room with all of you. I'm joined today by our board chair, Upasna.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Upasna Gautam. I am a senior product management leader at CNN, where I build the core technology platform that our journalists use to deliver breaking news to the world. I'm also our newly appointed chair of the board of directors at the News Product Alliance. I'm also a local Austinite. I've been here for the last 10 years, and I'm very thrilled to be here for my first ISOJ. This is, I was telling Becca yesterday, I'm very used to going to tech conferences, and this is actually my first in-person journalism conference, and it's amazing. The discussions, the level of depth in the conversations is something I haven't experienced in person before. So thank you.
So I'm apparently the only non-Austin person in the room. I didn't realize that when I joined the panel. Damon Kiesow. There's a few others. Yeah. Damon Kiesow, I'm the night chair in journalism innovation at Mizzou. Before that, I was director of product at McClatchy and also a co-founder of NPA.
Yeah.
This is a very unique, special workshop we have for you guys today. So we're not going to actually save room for Q&A at the end because it's going to be very immersive and engaging throughout. But let's start with why we're here. Can I? Oh, thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Okay. So it's not breaking news to us that we know what the core problems are that we're trying to solve in journalism right now. Degradation of trust and interest, and also misinformation. And the New York Times, as recently as earlier this year, spelled it out pretty clearly for us too. And at the News Product Alliance, our goal is to solve these problems through problem solving and collaboration and sustainability. And the way we do that is to not just understand the types of problems we need to solve, but why those problems are a problem in the first place. And we do that through agile product development and building an agile newsroom. And what does that mean? I promise it's not just tech bro speak. It is an actual methodology that works to build innovative, sustainable, ethical products in a system that is desperately in need of not just innovation, but growth and scalability and thinking about the future and not just the short term. And so we need to learn how to efficiently build innovative products that deliver sustainable solutions to our most pressing problems through agile product development. And this is how we do it. It's defining the right problems. And again, I always say this, it's not just here's the problem, but deeply understanding why that problem is a problem in the first place. And thinking big, but starting small, keeping our eyes on the prize and marked on the goal, but being adaptable along the way, being iterative along the way, and shipping to learn. And I know coming from tech into journalism, there is a little bit of an aversion to risk-taking, but there is a way to adopt healthy risk-taking and fast decision-making in order to adopt this iterative approach to product development. And when you ship to learn, you open yourself up to getting more feedback, to being more curious, and again, deeply understanding user needs. And that is really the problem we're trying to solve. We heard a lot yesterday in amazing forums and conversations about talking to our audiences, talking to our users to figure out what their pain points are, what pisses them off, what makes them happy, what is it that they actually need? Because someone in Hutto, Texas versus someone in Grand Rapids, Michigan have very different needs. And so we cannot make assumptions about the user. We are not the user. We are merely proxies at best for the user. And so adopting this product methodology and being agile allows us to focus on understanding those pain points and solving those core problems for our users. And that's how we actually deliver value. That's how we scale. That's how we grow and become sustainable, is to stay responsive and stay adaptable and to continuously improve with speed in mind. Because in breaking news, for sure, whether you're a large or small newsroom, time is of the essence. And if you cannot make changes quickly and adapt to user needs quickly and anticipate them before they even arise, you're already behind. And so this is the time to embrace these practices that have already been proven to work over and over and over again. And at the News Product Alliance, that is our goal. We're trying to offer you tools and resources to go and put these practices into application immediately, whether you're a CNN or a local newsroom in Hutto, Texas. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Becca to talk more about what we're going to dive into today.
Okay, so before we get into our exercise, I just want to add a couple more things about kind of what we think of product. We chose very intentionally not to put product in the title of this because we feel like sometimes that can be a word that throws people off. But really what we're talking about is this kind of evolution of digital technology in the news space. We all know about the, cultural divide between editorial and business and kind of this church and state mentality that's like traditionally been part of what we define as a news business. But with the, the coming of the internet and now even new emerging technologies like AI, technology has to be a big part of this equation. And with social media and the way in which we're like directly having these new relationships with audiences, we also have to think about audience needs. And so product is this operational capacity that sits in the middle of all of these very important disciplines for the business that helps connect them collaboratively so that we can all work together and find solutions that are unique to the business that you're in or unique to the organization that you're in. We're actually coming to the end of our first news product management certification program. And one of my roles is to work with all the instructors on building the curriculum. And I've talked to CDOs and CPOs and other like director level people who work in product all across the news industry to come teach this course. And something they almost all unanimously told me is, well, I can teach these frameworks, but it's different in every business I've worked in. And I need to understand the context, and the people who I'm teaching need to understand the context of their organization and their audience and their community in order to figure out which frameworks we bring in and how to apply them to solve problems in a unique way. Dale Anglin at the Press Forward panel yesterday was like, there is no one size fits all solution, or even at the foundation level of how to fund these communities. There's also no one size fit solution for any news organization. And so product development is the methodology and the operational capacity to find those solutions that are unique to your context. And so that's what we want to talk about today, is just like how challenging that can be, but also how rewarding and beautiful, and how we really think there are ways to solve these giant challenges that Upasna laid out. And that's why at the MPA, we're building an army of news product thinkers. We have a community now of over 3,000 news product professionals. It's the largest gathering globally of the people who are solving these problems in news. We do training and events monthly, and we offer career support like the News Product Management Certification Program that I just mentioned. So if you or someone on your team is thinking about how to get better at these skills, our applications are currently open, and you should check that program out. So the things we're going to be talking about today are kind of what this discipline looks like in action in newsrooms. It's a deep understanding of your community and their pain points. It is cross-team collaboration, working across the aisle. In journalism, we actually have a strong tradition of doing this, working with page layout designers or working with the ad sales team or thinking about legal needs. Like, we know how to work cross-functionally in newsroom. It's just bringing in even more disciplines into that process, like engineering. We can do it. And then a quick adaptation. The world is constantly changing. Our markets are changing. User behaviors are changing. We can't just pick a solution and then run with it. We actually have to learn from our decisions and continue to iterate upon them. This can be hard in a business that likes to rely on certainty. And you do need to have a little bit of certainty, but you also need to be able to learn from your mistakes and keep growing so that we don't fall behind. So these are like the main phases that we see newsrooms doing when they're actually applying product management operationally. Is you can do ideation and discovery, where you think about your audience needs, you test and learn, you define things, you try it, you do experiments, you test it, you learn, and then you launch and iterate and keep going. Okay, I want to get to our exercise because I think this is the fun part. So today we're going to go through a little bit of a choose your own adventure, and we're going to walk around the room and give you guys the mic. If you are joining us from Zoom, feel free to put your ideas into the chat. We do have people that are going to be monitoring the chat for us, so don't feel left out. This is our scenario. Imagine that you live in Hutto, Texas. It is a growing suburb about 40 minutes outside of Austin. Its population has doubled in the past decade to about 30,000 people. And you're a publisher who cares deeply about this community, and you want to start the publication Howdy Hutto. What else do you guys want to know about this scenario to help us get started in thinking about what is the news needs that we would need to maybe think about if we're launching a publication in this space? What are the demographics of Hutto? Great question. Who thought you would ask that? So Damon, do you want to jump in here and give us some more insights to set up this scenario?
Well, first, a quick raise of hands. Who in the room is already in a formal product role? Okay, that's not bad. That's a couple. That's good. Some are shy. They're not raising their hands because we know you are. Here's what we find in MPA, in my career history as well. I did this work for 10 years before I realized there was a title, like literally, and it was a revelation at the time. So what we heard in the introduction, 100% true. Every community has a different challenge. The processes, the way we solve problems, it's all the same conflicts. It's all, do we have enough information? What do we know about the audience? How do we solve the internal sort of political conflicts, right? So we want to walk through that today in this exercise. We have just over half hour. So we're not going to solve any world shattering problems here, but we're going to sort of walk through and have some fun with it. So you all in organizations, you may have been in an organization where we had a great question. What are the demographics? Great. What do we want to know next? We want to move from information. Demographics are information. Yep. Right. If we're designing the website for broadband or video, how good is that? What else do we want to know before I should probably cover up what's the solution we're aiming at here. Don't read that bottom line yet. I'll just stand right in front of it if I can. What else do we want to know? Oh, so psychographics, where are they in their life sort of cycle? Oh, wow. So what matters to the actual people we're trying to solve problems for? These are all great questions. What else do we have? Anything else that we want to throw in? What are the needs? And then what are those gaps, or how are they filling those gaps currently? However, they're solving a problem currently is a great indicator for what our opportunity is. We got lots of questions here. These are great. Yeah, good one. We don't. Who said podcast? Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not repeating for the Zoom appropriately enough. How do we know podcast is the right idea? Which if you're on Zoom, you're seeing on the screen as well. We don't know it's the right idea, but we don't know yet. So we're moving from information, demographics, habits, this kind of stuff. Well, that's data. Then we're trying to move to information, which is how do we make sense of that data in some way? And then we're trying to move to insights, right? An insight is something you can take action on. It's a very interactive display. So one insight we come up with when we started doing this research, what are their habits, that kind of thing, is, well, a lot of them commute. So of course, you all individually, as the publisher said, and the founder said, well, I like podcasts. We're gonna do a podcast because I think that would be a great way to reach people who are commuting in the morning with our news. I see some skeptical looks in the room. That's fine. Trust the process. Right. Okay. So we're gonna Just at tables, how long do we have? 10 minutes, 5, 10 minutes? 5 minutes at tables, just talk amongst yourself. We want to attack those questions. We've been tasked with a podcast. We want to ask those same questions. What's the business model? Do we have the skills? Who's the audience? All these things on the board. So just briefly talk amongst yourselves. We'll call on a couple tables and sort of get that feedback. If we're going to build this podcast, what's the effort? What's it going to cost us? What's the impact? What's the value going to be to the community? And how do we know? We really want to know, we really want to hear when we call tables is, how do you know that? Right? What makes you make that decision? What information or insights are you basing that on, and why? So we'll do 5 minutes, we'll time it, and then we'll make some quick rounds of the tables, and then we'll move on. Good? Excellent interactivity. What is next?
All right, guys, we're getting close to sharing.
Okay, I'll read a couple of questions from Zoom while we're wrapping. First question from Kat is, I don't think the audience or needs for this product have been clearly identified yet. A skeptic. And
Not
Margaret,
wrong.
Margaret says, have we done any user research in the community? Who would listen to this? Might be a place to start. That might be a place to start to make sure they really need and want a podcast. Very rational people on Zoom today.
Yeah. I do want to give a shout out to Community Impact, who's in the room. It is actually one of the news sources that we are competing with in Hutto. And so they do actually have a monthly published paper that they get delivered for free with lots of local events about business openings and things like that, as well as local politics. So they do have some news sources there already.
They do. So what do we have in the room? Who's got, we're not going to get everyone, we got a couple of minutes, but who's got some thoughts they want to add to the?
All right.
We'll bring you a mic.
Okay, so we were talking, and I'm, we have a lot of these filled out, but I think the one I want to talk about the most is the challenges. I have produced podcasts. It's really labor intensive. It's hard to get discovery. The market's not big enough. It'd be impossible to monetize. You'd be lucky if you had like 60 people listening to it, and you'd spend hours and hours working on it. An email newsletter is so much better.
Okay, so I as publisher might be wrong about this. Is that what you're David in the back? That never happens. The executives are always right.
Thanks. So I'm going to riff off that and say that we didn't actually talk about it directly, but we were talking about doing quizzes instead of podcasts, and just like a news quiz is, I know, but not really just talking about that quiz product, but just riffing off that. Like, you're starting with an expensive product that is hard to sell. What are the things that are less expensive and less hard to sell and that maybe fit with your advertising? So quiz is one thing, but other things that are, I guess, revenue first rather than product first, if you know what I mean?
Yep.
So
Very good.
Starting from that concept of what's the easiest thing I could turn into a product that connects to like existing monetization in some way, and then maybe build
from there. So I just want to point out that was product thinking without even using the Post-its, right? So that's impressive. We got time for a couple more, I think. You, sir, in the front.
I think we took a somewhat contrarian approach, which is the folks who have worked on podcasts in the industry, we deliver to a certain type of aesthetic and production value, which is super labor intensive, right? And then out there in the world are people who just turn on the microphone on their computer and start talking, which also, if you drive through certain parts of the country and you have your radio on, there are people on the airwaves who are just talking. So we didn't get all the way through this, but part of the sort of exploration was, what is the lowest effort? How can we get that access down as low as possible to create something that is possibly done in a couple of hours a day, possibly essentially offloading some of the production, some of the skills that are still required to someone who is outside of Hutto, who's maybe doing that for a bunch of other podcasts that aren't journalism related, to see if you can actually put something out there. And then on the needs piece of it, a hunch that, and I don't know this town at all, but most towns there's like something going on, right? Whether we're talking about Minneapolis and rideshare pulling out, or the town I live in, the school system is of high interest to many people. And so is it about sort of focusing on that, giving that a good ride for a period of time, and maybe even setting it up as a, like, we're not going to say we're doing this forever. We're going to follow this topic as long as it's interesting, and see if you build an audience off of that. If you have that just be as low effort as possible, and then do something with that audience, which is probably not a podcast.
Yeah. So that's fascinating. So when you said that, somebody yesterday was speaking about Twitch streams as being popular with some audience. Like, are we thinking about it the wrong way? It has to be a high value NPR type. Maybe it doesn't.
Also, that's like a really true iterative approach.
Yep.
Starting low effort, high impact, MVP, build upon it.
Yeah.
The other thing is, as Gen Xer, if I am hired by somebody and they tell me what to do, I'm going to do it.
So we're going to cannon fodder. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Yeah. So imagine you're going down this path and actually you encounter some challenges. Surprise. So you actually all kind of hit on some of these things that we wanted to introduce as the curveballs, which is one, your audience is actually quite small. Even though there are a lot of commuters, they already have their habits formed. And discovery of podcasts is really hard. Nobody is listening to your podcast. And it's a huge amount of work. Even if you took the low effort approach, you're still having to learn new skills like how to produce audio and get rid of the background noise and things like that. And like, it's hard. And you forgot about the things that people actually care about, like youth sports. Hutto is a Texas town, which means they care about football. And the high school football team is where it's at. And for some reason, you haven't talked about that at all. So this is really just to reinforce the importance of understanding your audience and your community and their unique context. And so you get into a situation where you're like, okay, well, how do I respond to challenges? The other thing that we're going to enter in this scenario is a jackpot. You are the lucky recipient of $250,000. Press Forward has come to your town. But with this money comes both opportunity and its challenge of its own, right? We have to think about, how do I invest this for long-term sustainability? It's not just spending the money now, it's thinking about, how do I build a team and build a product that's going to be able to sustain itself when this money runs out, because it will, trust me. So
Okay.
I guess, well, wait, I guess I should pause there actually for a moment. And I want to throw it back out to all of you. What do you do in this situation now? Now that you have some audience feedback, you know your idea isn't working, but you do potentially have an opportunity to keep working on this. You can go to the back.
So regardless of where the organization is in the, in its life, whether it is actually a startup or whether it's an existing entity and you get an injection of capital like that, you have to look at that capital as startup funds. You may be startup funds all over again, but it has to be it has to be looked at from the point of view of begin with the end in mind. Like, what is the ultimate result that you want to have from this money, and then set an actual timeline for what that end looks like, and then what is the sustainability to use this like startup funds so that it gets you to a sustainable result, knowing that you're not going to get this jackpot over and over again, and you can't be relying on it. So think about it like the precious seed money that it is, and how is that going to get you to that end point?
Yeah, I'm going to put Amy on the spot because I heard her say something.
Time to pivot to a newsletter. Yeah, I think so.
But why? Why do you pivot to a newsletter?
Cheaper, faster. You can get circulated better. People can do it. I mean, you can listen to a podcast asynchronously, but the idea is you can only probably do it in your car. So I like newsletters.
Who doesn't love a newsletter?
On Zoom, Kat says, I'd assess what news products and subject matter might be a better fit.
Yep, exactly. And what do you think about building your team or allocating these funds? Who do you hire? Cindy says product manager. A product manager from Texas State University. Cool.
Do you have resumes on you? Any resumes or?
Great. Oh, you could partner with a university class. What do you do in terms of thinking about like your long-term revenue strategy? Knowing the demographics of this community, do you go towards a subscription or membership model, or do you think more about local advertising? Anyone have thoughts? Or other revenue? Robert?
Yeah, we discussed like a sponsorship, like finding somebody who actually just thinks it's important to have this and try to get a sponsorship instead of trying to do it off some kind of ad revenue, because the analytics probably won't be there for serious ad dollars.
Yeah. And I want to again point out something that's a challenge of doing this as an imaginary exercise is none of us actually know the context of this community. and this market well enough to make these decisions. And so I think that really reinforces the point that if you're going to be making these calls in actually an informed way, you have to be really connected to the community and the market and understand the landscape, which is why I do think Cindy's right that the person that you need is a product manager. Oh, cool. We have another comment from chat, which is that we don't often look at the product from our journalistic or business perspective rather than audience. Oh, don't we often look at the product from our journalistic or business perspective rather than audience needs, which is true. Yes.
About this that we uncovered at CNN during some user research we did. So we also wanted to, this is when I first started at CNN, I worked on the e-commerce team, and we wanted to, of course, like everyone else, distribute a newsletter for daily deals. And through our user research, we found that when we asked the question to certain communities, would you like a newsletter of daily deals? There was a couple of users who said, what's a newsletter? And we completely redid how we constructed the questions. And that's something that we really, it was reiterated a lot yesterday, is deeply understanding your audience. It's learning to converse in the language of the listener. And so we transformed that question into, how would it feel, or how would you like to receive information about the best deals on beauty and, CPG or beauty products in Hutto, Texas, right in your email every single morning at 8 a.m. Being hyper specific is understanding nuance and getting to the core of those user problems. So that was just a very enlightening moment for us when it was an elder woman that we were doing this user testing with, or this user interview with rather. And it definitely shed a lot of light onto, our current market, and also where we wanted to expand into by asking better, smarter questions.
All right. And now we're going to do the exciting, is this a blocker or an opportunity to our adventure?
So you get an email from your board chair.
Thanks, Upasna.
I saw this at South by Southwest, you guys. Micro Zanoogle launched a pocket AI that's sweeping the nation, and everyone wants to have this Tamagotchi-like robot in their pocket. It's a multi-purpose gadget, and it's changing the way users receive news and information. So do you evolve your product to take advantage of this new distribution channel? How do you respond to me? How do you respond to that email?
Because we've all had it land on our desk, right? What do you do when something like this comes and just like completely disrupts your strategy? Immediately create a block for that word.
An email block.
It does bring up something I was going to mention, which I think one of the ways to start your process with the 250,000 or any product process is what I would call build, partner, buy. So this is not directly that, but it's sort of like, are you going to build something completely yourself and spend the whole 250,000? Are you going to allocate some of it to maybe partnering, or this would be kind of under this category of like, spend some of it into something that is existing and that you can lean into, and then, buy, are you just going to buy a technology that just solves the problem for you, that you don't build anything? And I'd say in this middle one of sort of partnering and obviously everyone has been burned over the years with partnerships with tech companies and leaning too much into a particular thing. And I think going back to what Eli said, unless it fits with your end goal, just put a block on that word and move on. But if a partnership comes along that is like, actually, that's exactly in line with what we were going to do, and the organized laziness part of my brain says, I can get where I'm going faster with this partnership, then yes.
Yeah.
So I would not say necessarily block it, because if it is a partnership, probably not that one, not with that name, but if it is a partnership that is actually, I can get there faster by just doing this, then maybe.
Yeah, I think once again, you need to think about, maybe this is sweeping the nation, but has it actually come to Hutto? Like, is this something that's in my community that's affecting the way that my users behave? Maybe not today, but maybe it will in 5 years. So how do I long-term maybe think about how that fits into my roadmap for my product without disrupting what I'm doing today? And you also might think a little bit about like, how do I manage my communication with my board chair so that they understand that I'm listening to them and that I hear them and I've thought about this, but I'm also kind of bringing it back to the strategy for our organization because $250,000 is not actually that much money. And as a small news organization, we have very limited resources and we can't just divide ourselves into too many directions, right? So reinforcing the core strategy that you're working on. We have another comment from chat from Margaret. So what's the value proposition of Pocket AI? Who are the audiences for it? And do those audiences have money they might spend with us? Is there a danger of spending some of our $250,000 on getting locked into a platform that's just a fad? Yeah, exactly. Evaluating risk. This is definitely like a risk management situation, which there are lots of frameworks and tools that product managers often use, just like financial analysts, to, consider risk.
That comment that we just received was a great example of asking really smart questions. Push back, ask why. That is the essence of product management and agile product development is in order to deeply understand our user and their needs, we have to ask why. And you got to be that annoying person as a product manager. I do it. I am, that is my label at CNN. I am that annoying person who is constantly asking our stakeholders and pushing back and saying, no, because if we want to prioritize this, guess what other things have to fall off? Ruthless prioritization and smart question asking is key. If everything is a priority, nothing is a priority.
Yeah. Being agile and being able to adapt to your market and your context doesn't necessarily mean constantly changing directions. So that's important to note too. So let's just as a room decide, what do we do given our scenario? Do you want to keep your podcast and just kind of tweak your coverage topics or double down on your discovery and marketing tactics? Do you want to scrap your podcast and start a newsletter? Who knew that would be an option? Do you want to pivot into this like emerging tech strategy, or do you have other ideas? Like, how would you respond to this situation? There's no wrong answer. I mean, there are, but
There's also number 4.
yeah, but we won't judge you.
Wild card. No ideas. We had revenue ideas, which is the hard part. No.
I think again, you have to go back into the wants needs assessment of your community. And if it doesn't, whatever, whichever one of these 4 directions that you're considering, you've got to reconcile that against the wants needs of your of your community. And if you don't have enough wants that someone is willing to pay for, and enough needs, again, that someone is going to pay for or going to have to, then you gotta pivot in whatever direction that leads you.
I'm also thinking if you're going to start a newsletter, you need to start thinking about partnerships. So you're not starting with, trying to build an email list up from scratch, but who in your community, how do you become essential to your community and who already owns some of those relationships?
Mm-hmm. Great. Cool. So we did want to give you at least one tool from this workshop. So if you're not familiar with a SWOT analysis, it's something that you can use to help you give an analysis of like a risk assessment and things like that. But it helps you put it into your unique context and the unique context of your business and your users. So thinking about what are the strengths of your organization? What do you do well? How can you capitalize on these strengths? What are your weaknesses, areas you can improve, but things it's like, I don't actually have any audio production capabilities. Why am I trying to build a podcast? Are there opportunities that are available to you in your market that are unique that you should capitalize on? Or are there threats? Are there already kind of existing competitors? Or, maybe it's a low income community and subscription model is just never going to work there. Like, what are the things you need to be taking into account when you start to analyze how to respond to a challenge? And this is where you can kind of use this as a tool to help you just kind of analyze the situation and then bring that as a way to help you make decisions. So we're at the end. But we have a few more minutes if anybody wants to add any additional thoughts. If you're not a part of the News Product Alliance Slack community, I highly encourage you to join. We have almost like we have over 2,000 people, but we have one of the highest active user rates of any product community or of any Slack community in journalism. People are actually there and talking to each other, which is great. And you see things like, hey, actually there was a question recently about quizzes and games. Like, I want to launch a games thing. What tools are people using? Is it actually working for your users? Talking about that kind of stuff. Hey, my newsletter, I'm having this problem with my block DNS thing, very highly technical problem. Has anyone encountered this? Can you give me help with this issue? We even have people asking for help with their careers. Like, I was recently laid off. Can anyone talk to me about my resume? Or we have people who just offer their time and say, I have a few hours of mentorship available if anybody wants to sign up. So it really is a great resource where you can find people who really understand the needs of this community and want to help each other. So please join us. Other resources that you can find from the News Product Alliance include our product kit. This is really an introduction to a lot of these ideas and concepts. So if you are bringing these ideas back to your team, the product kit is a great place to start. Or if you yourself are new to the discipline of product management and just kind of want a general primer, I highly recommend just going to our website, and under resources, you'll find the product kit. These are written by experts across the news community. And they're really, really great place to start. We also have a resource library with hundreds of resources, including case studies and training materials, some of which we've written ourselves, so you can get ideas. And we have events. So our virtual summit is going to be in October 11th of this year. This is an event that's global. We have roughly 500 attendees, and this year we're going to be doing a lot more training and learning, but also idea sharing and knowledge sharing. And applications are open currently for our news product management certification program. This is a 3.5-month long cohort-based program where you really get to get deep. It's designed for people who are in that mid to senior leadership position and want to move more into product leadership. So we help you develop your technical skills and your change management skills, which is really key for people who are trying to move into this space. There's 3 modules. In the beginning, we learn about audience discovery and how to analyze your market and kind of think about the unique needs of your community and your business. The second module is all about developing your product strategy, how to work with designers, how to work with engineers, how to work with people on the revenue side of your organization, and then bring that into a cohesive strategy and actually lead your team to follow a roadmap, build and follow a roadmap. And then last, we end with a lot of leadership training. We had Julia Baser from Bloomberg last week talking about stakeholder management, and we had Kat Downsmolder talking about creating your vision and presenting that to executive stakeholders. So we really do a lot at the end to kind of help you bring your case forward. So if that sounds interesting, please apply. Any questions? Oh yeah. Mark asked, when do actual applications close? May 2nd, I think. Cindy.
Context of this slide, I would just like to call to other academics that these are new competencies that we need to have in our programs beyond just reporting and editing. We have people in this room.
Yeah.
We need more of that discussion happening across our discipline.
For those online, Cindy Royal had a call to action for academics out there that we really need to bring these topics into our academic training for young journalists. Damon actually wrote a textbook on this, which someone in the room, Robert, is going to be using in one of his classes. Oh, and Jake. So everybody get in it. Okay. I'm going to pull this back up just so that everyone can join us on Slack if you didn't get this QR code. Should have been walking around.
It's okay. In that effort, academics being able to take the certificate might be useful. Okay. First time I didn't think we could. So it said journalists. So it just seemed more Becca's answer was you can take it.
You can take it. It's open to everyone. Yeah.
Probably don't need the mic, but just one thing, we were negging on podcasts there, and I think that's probably accurate. But at the same time, there are some really interesting things happening with turning articles into audio now, which is much more efficient than it used to be. Still human in the loop checking it and that kind of thing, but I see a lot of people nodding their heads. So audio is still potentially a low-cost solution, even if it isn't a podcast. And I would also say that text versus email is also something that a lot of local news entities are leaning into. It doesn't work for everybody, but in some markets, text can be a better way or an additional way than email and newsletters.
I was convinced Mark's table was going to suggest AI audio, and you lowering the cost.
Yeah, we actually just edited a case study that we're going to publish in our newsletter soon about News Verifier Africa and some accessibility things that they did using AI to do audio and signing for people who are deaf to translate their content. So.
Hi, Paris Brown with the Baltimore Times, and we actually created technology around AI and not only listening to summaries, but also our voices, right? So we have a trusted brand in Baltimore for 40 years, excuse me. And we took our voices, meaning Black voices, and what we're finding is they are engaging more in the voice as well as looking at the summaries. So our stats tell us that.
We should follow up and do a case study on you guys.
I think we're out of time.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Enjoy the rest